Dual sport and adventure motorcycles tend to lead a very hard life, so it's really important to keep up to speed on the maintenance of your motorcycle. I find that most riders are typically pretty good about doing things such as changing oil and checking tire pressures, but there's a lot of maintenance tasks that are often overlooked. So today I'm going to be sharing with you what I find to be the 5 most commonly overlooked maintenance tasks that can help you prevent a disaster out on the trails. Alright, coming in at number 5 is a super common one that gets overlooked, and it is wheel bearings and chassis bearings. For wheel bearings, they're super easy to check, and if they fail, you'll be in a world of hurt. So what I suggest you do is put your finger between the bushing and bearing and the swing arm on the back, give the wheel a shake. If you can feel any free play at all, it's time to replace those bearings. Don't let them get too bad. Same process on the front. Next thing to take a look at is your linkage bearings. They live here at the bottom of the rear shock, and they handle a lot of abuse during a ride. So you're going to want to make sure you grease those up. This old Honda here actually has grease nipples. New bikes will not. So periodically check that for play by putting the bike up on a stand, moving the swing arm up and down, feeling for play. Similarly, swing arm bearings can also get damaged and need grease once in a blue moon. Far less commonly, but another bearing to check on your bike is your steering stem bearings here and here. Same thing, put the bike on a stand. If you can feel any free play, they either need to be replaced or tightened up. The number one killer of bearings on a dirt-oriented motorcycle is water intrusion. So if you're riding in muddy terrain all the time, or you power wash your bike, make sure you avoid those bearings and you grease them up often. I think most riders would agree that brakes are a fairly important part of the motorcycle. I find these sometimes get often looked, but most riders are up to speed on checking for pad thickness. Just take a look through there. It's pretty easy to tell if there's any thin material. What I do find riders often overlook, though, brake fluid. Yes, so I always change this every season or two. Easy way to check is to take a look in your window here on the master cylinder. If your brake fluid is dark, it's time to replace it. Brake fluid is hygroscopic, meaning that it attracts water, and that causes it to have a lower boiling point over time. And the last thing you want in an emergency stopping situation is to cook your brakes. So brake fluid, very important thing to check. Coming in at number 3 for overlooked maintenance tasks, we have our chain and sprockets, which are obviously a pretty important part of making a motorcycle go. Chain maintenance, I find a lot of riders tend to slack off on lubricating their chains and setting chain tension, but what I really wanted to focus on today was sprocket wear, and more specifically the front sprocket here. A lot of bikes don't have a cover like this one that you can see through, so they never actually see their front sprocket. You got to remember, your front sprocket spins 3 or 4 times as much as the rear sprocket. So what I see often is the rear sprocket looks okay, and the front sprocket is totally worn out and sometimes even missing teeth. The conventional wisdom online is to always replace your chain and sprockets at the same time. And I agree, however, with one caveat. If your front sprocket is worn out and the rear sprocket looks okay and the chain seems to be fine, I will occasionally just throw on a new front sprocket for the remaining life of that rear sprocket and chain. It is, although foolish, to put a brand new chain on worn out sprockets. So if you have a bike and it has quite a few miles on it, or you've never bothered to take a look, pop off this cover and check out your front sprocket. I bet you'll be surprised by the kind of carnage you'll see. So my second most overlooked maintenance item is spoke tension. Now, very few riders check this. However, there's a really easy way to check. Grab yourself a wrench or really anything metal and just hit your spokes. You should hear a nice ringing noise. What you're listening for is changes in that tone that denote a different level of tightness. What you really want to make sure is you don't have any spokes that just make a solid thud noise. If you have any spokes that make a solid thud noise, it's time to tighten them up. And also, checking out your wheels is a good way to make sure you don't have any missing spokes. A missing spoke can quickly become many missing spokes, really threatening the structural integrity of your wheel. And although wheel failures are very rare, you certainly don't want to be a part of one, as that would be a disaster. So it's easy to do and it's quick. Check out your spoke tension. And my number one most overlooked maintenance item is something that you already know you have to maintain and you're probably slacking off on: air filters. So on this bike, it's not too bad to get. I just remove this side cover, remove a couple screws, and I can get to the air filter. It's a chunk of foam. Now, the problem with this is most riders know they have to maintain it, but they maintain it on a set schedule. And why that's silly is because in rainy conditions or wet early season like now, there's no dust, so the air filter remains clean for quite some time. However, once we get into the summer and it's dusty, that air filter will get shockingly dirty every single ride. So you may have to clean it every ride or two. So my advice to you, don't check out your air filter on a schedule. Just check it often. And in the summer, you're going to want to check it every ride. It's shockingly common how many bikes that I see where they come to me, it has running issues, and the only problem is that the air filter is so clogged that the bike is choking for air. So most off-road oriented bikes have foam air filters like this one. You can clean them and reuse them lots. Just make sure you oil them. Some dual sports, unfortunately, like the CRF 250 and 300L models, have a paper air filter, which needs to be replaced when it's dirty, which can get spendy pretty quickly. So check those air filters, okay? I don't want to see anyone running around with a clogged out air filter making their bike run like garbage. Nothing that I discussed in this video is particularly glamorous, but if you keep up on regular maintenance, your bikes will last a very long time, just like this 40-year-old Honda right here that is able to keep going down the trails and getting the job done. So maybe next time you're thinking about buying some fancy billet aftermarket part, take a look at some of the bearings on your bike and see if maybe that money would be better spent on something not as glamorous. That's it for now. If you liked the video, be sure to subscribe.